Don't worry, I'm still me, Ma. I'm still your son.
I didn't even know My Adventures with Superman existed, which speaks to the level of marketing around the show. I'm on YouTube almost every day watching some sort of comic book content, and I'm on HBO Max 2 or 3 times a week, and I didn't hear a peep, which is unfortunate because this is actually a pretty solid show. It even manages to make some commentary on Superman's existence, not just in the fictional city of Metropolis, but in our world too. Let's talk about it. Comic book movies have gone through so many peaks and valleys over the years, and not just in quality, but also in the feel, the tone, and overall messaging of those stories. And if that's true for any character in comic book media, it's especially true for the character of Superman.
How did you know you'd be bulletproof?
I didn't. I just knew that you weren't.
My Adventures with Superman is a unique anime-inspired twist on the classic Superman story. And when I say anime-inspired, I really mean it. Everything from the emoting to the large eyes and blushy cheeks, and you can't tell me that this intro isn't straight out of an anime show. Now, this is definitely a more lighthearted take compared to the more recent Superman stories we've gotten on screen, but it deals with tragedy and drama balanced in with that lighthearted tone pretty well. It actually reminds me a lot of Avatar: The Last Airbender in that way. The show revolves around Lois, Clark, and Jimmy Olsen as they navigate their lives working at the Daily Planet, which was really refreshing to see. I surprisingly really liked the Daily Dose aspect of their young adult lives. Although the show isn't an origin story by any means, it does focus a lot on beginnings. Lois isn't quite that big shot reporter yet. Clark is still figuring out his powers and where he's from, and most importantly, what it means to be Superman. This series also shows us the beginning of things like Task Force X and how Amanda Waller comes into power, which was a nice but unexpected touch. The dynamic between the main characters is really fun to watch. Lois is a fiery go-getter that's so determined to be taken seriously as a journalist, so much so that she can be a little obnoxious at times.
What'd you think of Superman? Pretty great guy, right?
Oh, he's a liar.
Jimmy's like that little brother tagging along, struggling with the fact that Clark and Lois are going to be spending a little bit more time together without him.
Hold up! You told Lois before you told me, your best friend?
I like that their lives feel lived already. Even making Clark and Jimmy to have known each other for a long time before the show starts was a great touch. Although the show does some very unique things, it also plays with some of the classic things we come to expect from a Superman story. One of those things being the dynamic of Clark trying to hide his identity from Lois Lane. Their interactions are really sweet and cute, staying true to that staple dynamic, but I like how they put their own little twist on it. Lois is portrayed to not immediately be trusting of Superman's actions, adding a layer of suspense to their relationship. In most Superman series I watch, whether it be Smallville or Superman the Animated Series, I find myself enjoying it, but I'm a little bit eager for the show to get to the point where people in his life know who he is. And I felt that here too, but in a different way. I was genuinely worried about how Lois would react when she finds out who Clark really is. They did a good job of building tension around that aspect, and when she did find out, it didn't feel melodramatic. All of the drama felt earned because they put so much work into the tension up to that point. With that being said, although I do like the relationship aspect of this show, I'm glad the show wasn't only a slice of life or a rom-com series. Alongside of the friendship, Jimmy, Lois, and Clark deal with a larger mystery involving these really high-tech weapons that somehow make their way into the hands of intergang villains. In each episode, the mystery gets bigger and bigger. The show was really doing a lot in terms of its villains and the mystery. There were so many different minor threads going on that, to be honest, I feel it spread itself a little thin at times, but characters like Amanda Waller and the General added dimensions and layers to the mystery that made me want to stick around to the end, even though certain pieces were becoming a little bloated in my opinion.
Remember when you asked me who I was? Why I'm here? I finally have an answer for you.
All good shows are going to have these running themes throughout them, and this one is no different. The themes of love, friendship, acceptance, and identity are explored very heavily throughout this series, acceptance and identity being the ones they dive into the most for sure. The show did something that I really didn't expect from a random Superman anime that I never heard about before. It plays with the idea of Superman's Boy Scout persona and how that can be perceived, using the people of Metropolis to kind of mirror real-life criticisms of the character and why people don't like them or find them to be boring. If anything, this series pushes back against the idea that Superman's kindness and altruism is something that needs to be erased from his personality. It also pushes back against that nihilist worldview that we see so much in modern day superhero stories. There's so many kind and good-hearted people in this series outside of Clark himself, and I didn't even know that was something that I wanted before I saw it here. I think there is room for both types of storytelling, but I think the key is balance, and there is balance here. There's a lot of evil and power-hungry and money-hungry people in this series, but it just doesn't harp on the idea that we all are like that. It more so harps on the idea that we all have some good in us. I thought it was really dope how they were able to keep the tone relatively lighthearted while still diving into some of the more nihilistic undertones that the darker Superman stories like to play with. And of course, we're in a multiversal era of superhero storytelling, so using that element was a simple way to explore that aspect. The multiversal aspect adds an interesting twist that I wasn't quite expecting, but it also didn't feel like it came out of left field. I found some of it to be really enjoyable actually, with the fun little Easter eggs sprinkled throughout, like the different versions of Superman on different Earths, and I also liked how it showed Lois that all versions of Superman and Clark aren't as nice as he is. It adds a little bit of doubt to how she's already feeling, giving a little bit more attention to their relationship because they haven't fully recovered from the fact that she discovered he's Superman at this point. But then there's other weird things like the League of Lois Lanes and the interdimensional peacekeepers making an appearance that felt a little more like overkill, but at the same time they were used to push the story forward, so I can't be mad at it. Because Lois needed to find out that there were evil versions of Superman, and the League of Lois Lanes opened her eyes to that.
I'm gonna hide my powers and be a normal man having a normal day. Hang on! Starting now.
My favorite aspect of this version of Clark, honestly, is how human he feels. As the series progresses, Clark is taking on so much responsibility, fully stepping into his role as Metropolis's protector. He's stressed out, he's anxious, and he's struggling to keep the balance of his new powers and responsibility. He's pretty much running himself into the ground, trying to stop every single crime, solve every mystery, so much so to the point that he's becoming a little sloppy with his work. On top of that, there's a campaign to get the public turned on him and fear him. And it starts to work. And as the story goes on, we also find out how much Lois is connected to the main mystery as well. And although there were a few parts in the middle that made the story bloated, I really love how they were able to bring it all together at the last couple of episodes. Overall, this series offers a really fresh take on the classic Superman story. They made some small tweaks to personalities and changes to certain characters, but they always kept the essence of those characters intact, which is something that's always going to be an added benefit for me. They played with some things that we've definitely seen before in Superman stories, but they put their own narrative twist on them. I've only watched season 1, but I'm definitely going to watch season 2 this weekend. With DC working with their Elseworlds label, I really hope shows like this can continue to be made. It's definitely worth the watch in my opinion, whether you're a fan of the more classic Superman or the elements from the New 52 version. I think it does a really good job at blending those aspects of both of them together. But with that being said, if you're not a fan of anime and that art style and style of storytelling, it does run rampant through this show. I said this was an anime inspired series, but in reality, this is just an anime Superman show, and that may turn some people off. Either way, I'd love to know what you guys think about my adventures with Superman down in the comments. Until next time,